in point. So hi there, and welcome to another episode of Editor's Notes with Cy Williams. That's me. Today is April 7th, 2022, and here are some of the Canadian news items that people are talking about today. Now, this is of particular interest if you live in British Columbia. Now, before we get into it, speaking of British Columbia, quick shout out to our friends at the Grow Up Conference being held in Victoria this June 20th to 22nd, and I hope to see you there. That's Victoria, June 20th to 22nd. Now, BC is seeking feedback on cannabis consumption spaces for cafes, festivals, spas, and more. I got a quote, cannabis consumption space is a general term that refers to a business, a special event, or other establishment providing cannabis for sale and use on site. Starting yesterday, April 6th, British Columbians are invited to share their thoughts on non-medical cannabis consumption spaces. The province of British Columbia is launching an online public engagement forum about cannabis consumption spaces to help inform on the decisions about whether to permit these spaces and how these spaces can be regulated. The engagement runs from April 6th to May 8th, 2022. Now, cannabis consumption space is a term for a business or special event that provides cannabis for on-site sale and use. Examples include cafes, lounges, festivals, ticketed events, and once again, spas. Now, we have heard from cannabis businesses that consumption spaces could provide just simply an amazing opportunity for the sector to become more economically viable and could meet the interests of people who use cannabis. Now, this was something that Mike Farnsworth said. He's the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. He also said at the same time, others have raised public health and safety concerns, which need to be carefully weighed in on. Now, and BC government wants to hear the views of all British Columbians so they can help shape how British Columbia's cannabis sector continues to evolve. Well said, Mr. Farnsworth. So, if allowed, cannabis consumption spaces would need to align with provincial public health and safety objectives. For example, indoor smoking and vaping would continue to be prohibited. The provincial cannabis framework includes a key role for Indigenous and local governments in determining whether and where licensed cannabis sales can take place in their communities. This approach would also apply to cannabis consumption spaces. Although consumption spaces are not currently allowed in British Columbia, the agency tasked with overseeing cannabis regulations in the province, the BC Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, is currently exploring a model that could include outdoor designated areas, cafes, lounges, concerts, or festivals, ticketed events, and once again, spa experiences even. The province is seeking input on a wide range of activities and considerations. More information on cannabis consumption spaces, the engagement process that's going on right now, and a link to the engagement survey can be found at www.engage.gov.bc.ca/cannabis consumption spaces. Now, what we heard report summarizing the results of the engagement, the whole engagement, will be released later this year. Now, you can learn more about cannabis consumption spaces and provide feedback through the engagement website. Now, the engagement website is www.engage.gov.bc.ca/cannabis consumption spaces. Whoa, is that a mouthful? For more information on cannabis regulation in BC, you can visit www.cannabis.gov.bc.ca. And while few details are available on what consumption spaces could possibly look like, But in the past, the BC government has suggested that one possible approach they are considering is a special occasion licensing to tie into future farm gate on-site sales for producers. Now, the farm gate program is expected to be launched this fall in British Columbia. The government's discussion papers on the topic argues that while consumption space policies should encourage people to transition from illicit to legal cannabis products, the availability of consumption spaces should also not contribute to significant increases in problematic cannabis use. Wow, that's a mouthful. Indoor smoking and vaping would not be allowed in consumption spaces, but the province is considering whether to permit outdoor smoking and vaping in consumption spaces. So outdoor patios. The discussion paper also raises the question of if the co-location of cannabis products and alcohol should be allowed for consumption spaces. So what do you think? You can read the discussion paper, complete the online survey, and provide a written submission online. We've got about a month, just over a month to do this. The BC government wants to hear from people living in British Columbia, stakeholder groups and local groups and local and Indigenous governments. They want to hear from the people of British Columbia. The discussion paper online is meant to help you prepare to provide feedback on consumption spaces. It lays out a lot of the challenges and opportunities that consumption spaces could present and how the ministry would approach consumption space work. Now, it's important to share your views about cannabis consumption spaces by completing the online survey, and then it takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes to complete. Not a lot of time. It's great to have your say. So you provide the survey, you do a written submission on your views on consumption spaces. You do that on the website, and the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General will use that feedback from this engagement to prepare a What We Heard report. And it will inform recommendations by the province of British Columbia on whether to allow consumption spaces, and if so, how this should be done. The engagement timeline is as follows. Launch of engagement was yesterday, April 6, 2022. Engagement closes on May 9th, 2022, and feedback will be accepted until 4 p.m. on May 9th. You can visit www.govtogetherbc for more ways to engage with the British Columbia government. They also put this great backgrounder up on their website, and that comes from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, and it's got the headline, Cannabis in BC. And it lists the following background information that they think you should know about before you get into submitting an opinion. Non-medical cannabis was legalized in BC in October 2018. Cannabis can be legally purchased from licensed private non-medical cannabis stores, publicly run BC cannabis stores, or stores authorized to sell cannabis through a government-to-government agreement with Indigenous nations. What else do they have? They listed that there are 426 licensed cannabis retail stores in BC at the end of 2021. Also said that in 2021, BC's cannabis stores saw $554 million in sales, up from $370 million in sales the previous year. It also said that almost 1/3 of British Columbians 19 and over report having used cannabis in the past year. The province is continually monitoring the impact of cannabis legalization on the health and safety of British Columbians. The result of the 2021 BC Cannabis Use Survey, which surveyed almost 25,000 British Columbians, will be published spring 2022. Okay, that's it for me today. Thank you for joining me. Stay lifted, and I'll see you next time.